Why do we buy another book on habits when we know we should just go to the gym? Why do we download another productivity app when the problem is our own focus? Why do we feel more disconnected than ever, even with devices that promise to connect the entire world? We have more information, more tools, and more hacks than any generation in history. Yet, for so many, a deep sense of unease remains, a feeling that we are missing something fundamental. A sense that the complex solutions we are sold are just papering over a very simple crack in our foundation. What if the answer wasn't in the next bestseller, but in a way of thinking that is thousands of years old? What if a few simple principles, first written down on papyrus, hold more practical truth than the entire self-help section of a modern bookstore? This isn't about magic or ancient aliens. It is about a core operating system for reality that has been sitting there, waiting for a very long time. It suggests that the universe is not random and that we are not simply victims of circumstance. It offers a framework so simple and so profound that it can feel almost unbelievable. But its power is not in its complexity. Its power is in its truth. And maybe, just maybe, it's the thing we have been looking for all along. Number 17, why are we so unhappy with all our modern tools? The global self-help industry is worth over $13 billion. It is projected to grow substantially in the next few years. In the United States alone, rates of major depression have increased significantly over the past decade, especially among young adults and adolescents. A study found that the average American adult spends nearly 7 hours a day looking at a screen. That is not including work-related screen time. We have more access to knowledge, more ways to connect, and more tools for improvement than ever. So why isn't it working? The problem is not the tools. The problem is the user. We are trying to fix software issues by buying a new keyboard. Your modern self-help often focuses on symptoms, not root causes. It tells you to manage your time better. It gives you 10 tips to be more confident. It sells you a diet plan. These are all external fixes for what are often internal problems. It is like trying to fix a car's engine by washing the exterior. The car looks better for a little while, but it still will not run properly. The fundamental flaw in much of modern advice is that it operates on the surface of life. It deals with the what and the how, but rarely touches the why. It assumes the world is a random collection of events and people that we must react to. It puts us in a defensive position. We are constantly managing, coping, and reacting to the chaos we perceive around us. We are told to build better habits to deal with stress. We are not taught why the stress exists in the first place or how our own mind creates it. We are told to use positive affirmations to combat negative self-talk. We are not shown the underlying principle that governs our mental states. This is why we keep buying the books. This is why we keep downloading the apps. Each one offers a temporary fix, a small hit of hope. But because they do not address the fundamental operating system of our reality, the old problems always return. We get a new productivity system and feel great for a week, then we fall back into old patterns. We start a new diet and have great success for a month, then the old cravings and habits creep back in. We are constantly patching holes in a sinking boat, instead of learning how the boat itself works. The ancient wisdom we are going to explore is different. It does not offer a quick fix. It does not give you a 10-step plan. It does something far more powerful. It hands you the user manual for the boat. It explains the principles of the water it sails on. It shows you how the wind and the currents work. It does not promise you a life without storms, but it does promise that you can learn to be a master sailor, capable of navigating any weather. It shifts you from being a passenger on your own ship, tossed about by the waves, to being the captain at the helm. This is a radical shift in perspective. It moves from the outside-in approach of modern self-help to an inside-out approach that changes everything. It suggests that the universe is not happening to you. It is happening through you. Number 16, who was this thrice great teacher? The name Hermes Trismegistus sounds like something from a fantasy novel. It translates to Hermes the Thrice Great. The earliest mentions of him appear in the 2nd century BC. He was not seen as a man, but as a fusion of two gods. The Greeks identified their god Hermes, the messenger, with the Egyptian god Thoth. Thoth was the Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, and magic. This combination created a figure who was seen as the ultimate source of all knowledge, both divine and earthly. Ancient Egyptians credited Thoth with inventing writing and being the scribe of the gods. This figure, Hermes Trismegistus, was said to be the author of tens of thousands of books. Some ancient writers claimed he wrote 36,525 books covering all possible knowledge. Of course, this is a mythical number, but it points to the immense respect he commanded. These writings, known as the Hermetica, were said to contain the secrets of the universe, astrology, alchemy, and theosophy. They were a complete system for understanding reality. So who was he really? We do not know. There was likely no single man named Hermes Trismegistus. The name is probably a label for a whole school of thought, a tradition of wisdom passed down through generations. These teachings were a blend of Egyptian philosophy and Greek thought, flourishing in Egypt during the time of the Ptolemies and the Romans. This was a melting pot of cultures, and Hermeticism was born from it. The texts themselves were written in Greek between about 100 and 300 AD. So while the ideas are rooted in much older Egyptian traditions, the books we have today come from this later period. This is not a new discovery. The Hermetic texts were hugely influential for centuries. They were lost to the Western world for a long time after the fall of Rome, but they were preserved in the Arabic world. In the 15th century, a collection of these texts, the Corpus Hermeticum, was brought to Florence, Italy. Cosimo de' Medici, the ruler of Florence, was a great patron of learning. He had his translators stop their work on Plato to translate the Corpus Hermeticum first. He believed it was older and more important. This reintroduction of Hermetic thought had a massive impact. It helped fuel the Renaissance. Thinkers and artists were electrified by its ideas. They saw in it a philosophy that celebrated human potential and our connection to the divine. It influenced some of the greatest minds in history. Figures like Giordano Bruno, John Dee, and even Isaac Newton were deeply influenced by Hermetic and alchemical texts. Newton wrote more on alchemy than he did on physics and gravity. These were not fringe ideas. They were central to the intellectual development of the Western world. Then, in the early 17th century, a scholar named Isaac Casaubon analyzed the Greek text and concluded it was not from ancient Egypt. He dated it to the early centuries AD. This discovery caused a scandal. The texts lost some of their prestige. They were no longer seen as the direct word of an ancient Egyptian sage, but this does not diminish the power of the ideas within them. The truth of a principle does not depend on who wrote it down. Gravity worked before Newton described it. The principles in the Hermetic texts are either true and useful, or they are not. Their origin story is fascinating history, but it is not what makes them relevant today. The focus here is on a specific set of 7 principles, which were laid out clearly in a small book from 1908 called The Kybalion. The authors of that book remained anonymous, claiming they were just presenting the core teachings that have been passed down for thousands of years. It is these 7 principles that form our user manual. Number 15, what if? The universe operates on just 7 simple rules. The average smartphone has over 80 apps installed. A recent study showed that the United States tax code is over 10 million words long. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, creating trillions of connections. We live in a world of staggering complexity. We are taught that to solve complex problems, we need complex solutions. We are told to specialize, to learn more and more about a smaller and smaller field. But what if the opposite is true? What if the universe, in all its vastness, operates on a few elegant, simple, and universal laws? This is the central claim of the Hermetic teachings. They propose that everything, from the formation of a galaxy to a thought in your head, is governed by 7 fundamental principles. These are not man-made laws, they are not suggestions, they are described as the inherent truths of existence, like the laws of physics. You do not have to believe in them for them to affect you. You are subject to the law of gravity, whether you understand it or not. In the same way, these 7 principles are always at play in your life. The Kybalion lays them out. They are the principle of mentalism, the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect, and the principle of gender. At first glance, these might sound abstract or mystical, but The whole point of this ancient wisdom is its practicality. These are not ideas to be debated in a philosophy classroom. They are tools to be used in the laboratory of your own life. Understanding these principles is like being a chess player who finally learns how the pieces move. Before, you were just pushing them around the board hoping for the best. You would win some games and lose others, and it all felt like a matter of luck. But once you understand the rules, you can begin to play the game with intention. You can see several moves ahead. You can anticipate your opponent's actions. You are no longer a victim of the game. You are a participant. This is the promise. It is not a promise of an easy life, but of a comprehensible one. It suggests that the chaos we see is not real. It is just our misunderstanding of the underlying order. When you see a problem in your life, a financial struggle, a relationship issue, a health problem, you are seeing an effect. Modern self-help tries to fix the effect. The Hermetic approach tells you to find the cause, and the cause almost always lies in how these 7 principles are operating in your life, whether you are aware of it or not. Think of it like this. You could spend your whole life studying the infinite variety of leaves on a tree. You could categorize them by shape, size, and color, or you could study the trunk and the roots. Once you understand the root system and how it draws water and nutrients, you understand the source of all the leaves. The 7 Hermetic principles are the roots of reality. Everything else is just the leaves. This is a profound shift from focusing on the infinite effects to understanding the few simple causes. And that changes everything. Number 14 is everything really just mind. A single particle, a photon, can behave as a particle or a wave. The thing that determines its behavior is the act of observing it. This is a fundamental concept in quantum physics known as the observer effect. The universe at its most basic level seems to respond to consciousness. The average person has about 6,200 thoughts per day. Most of these thoughts are repetitive, habitual, and unconscious. A placebo is a fake treatment that can produce a real medical response. Studies have shown placebos can be up to 30 to 40% as effective as real medication for some conditions purely because of the patient's belief. The first Hermetic principle is the principle of mentalism. It is the foundation for all the others. The Kybalion states it. Simply, Theal is mind, the universe is mental. This is a huge idea. It is probably the hardest one to fully accept. It proposes that the entire universe, everything we see, touch, and experience, is a mental creation of a single, infinite consciousness. The text refers to this consciousness as He-Al. It says that everything, from you and me to the rocks and the stars, exists within the mind of the Al. We are like characters in a dream that is being dreamed by a universal mind. This does not mean the universe is not real. Your dream is real to you while you are in it, isn't it? The pain, the joy, the fear, it all feels completely real. This principle is not saying your desk is not solid. It is saying that the substance that makes up your desk is, at its core, mental energy. It is thought held in a very slow, dense vibration. This is a radical departure from the modern materialist worldview, which says that matter is the fundamental reality and consciousness is just a byproduct of a complex brain. Hermeticism says the opposite. Consciousness is the fundamental reality and matter is a byproduct of consciousness. So what does this mean for you? If the universe is mental, then your mind is a part of that universal mind. You are not just a piece of meat with a brain inside, you are a center of consciousness. And because the whole system is mental, the same laws that govern the universe also govern your own mind. Your thoughts are not just random, meaningless firings of neurons, they are creative acts. They are a form of energy. This is the key. If the universe is mental, then the tool for interacting with the universe is your mind. This is why placebo effects are real. The mind's belief creates a physical change in the body. This is why the observer effect exists in quantum physics. Consciousness interacts with the fabric of reality. Modern self-help touches on this with ideas like mindset, tells you to think positive. But it often presents this as a trick you play on yourself to feel better. The principle of mentalism goes much deeper. It says that thinking is not just a way to feel better. It is the creative force of the universe. Your thoughts are not just reactions to your world. They are actively shaping your world. This is an enormous responsibility. It means we cannot blame the outside world for our internal state. Our internal state is what is creating our experience of the outside world. This is not about blaming the victim. It is about empowerment. It takes you out of the passenger seat and puts you in the driver's seat. If your reality is a product of mind, and you have a mind, then you have the ability to change your reality. Not by wishing it away, but by fundamentally changing the mental causes that are producing the physical effects you see around you. This is the master key. All the other principles explain how this mental creation works. Number 13, how can something be true and untrue at the same time? A fractal is a mathematical pattern that repeats itself at every scale. A tiny piece of a fractal, when magnified, looks identical to the whole. The circulatory system of a human body, with its branching arteries and veins, looks remarkably similar to the branching pattern of a river delta or a lightning strike. The structure of a single atom, with electrons orbiting a nucleus, is a model often used to describe planets orbiting a sun. The second Hermetic principle is the principle of correspondence. The famous axiom for this principle is, as above, so below, as below, so above. This principle states that there is always a correspondence, a harmony, and an agreement between the different planes of existence. The major planes are usually described as the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. The principle says that the same laws that operate on the highest spiritual plane also operate on the lowest physical plane. They just manifest differently. This is an incredibly powerful tool for understanding. It means that you can learn the secrets of the universe by studying yourself. You can understand the above by looking at the below. You do not need a giant telescope to understand the cosmos. You can look at the patterns in your own life, in your own body, in nature around you. The same patterns repeat everywhere. For example, on the physical plane, we see the pattern of creation, growth, decay, and then new creation. A seed grows into a tree, the tree produces fruit, the fruit falls and decays, and a new seed grows. This same pattern exists on the mental plane. An idea is born creation. You develop it and work on it growth. The idea becomes outdated or is replaced decay. And from the lessons of that old idea, a new, better idea is born new creation. The same pattern also applies to relationships, businesses, and even civilizations. As below, so above. This principle allows us to reason from the known to the unknown. If we see a pattern on our physical level, we can infer that a similar pattern exists on higher, more subtle levels. If we understand how our own mind works, we can begin to understand how the universal mind works. So how is this practical? It solves the problem of feeling small and insignificant in a vast universe. This principle says you are not a separate, tiny fragment. You are a microcosm of the macrocosm. The entire universe is reflected within you. The same forces that shape galaxies are at work within your own consciousness. It also gives us a method for solving problems. If you have a problem on the physical plane, say a lack of money, you can use the principle of correspondence to look for the root cause on the mental plane. What are the mental patterns, the beliefs about wealth and scarcity that are creating this physical reality? As above the mental, so below the physical. You cannot solve a financial problem with just financial tools if the root cause is a mental pattern of lack. You must change the pattern above to see the change below. This is also where the idea of paradox comes in. The principle helps us understand that many apparent opposites are actually two sides of the same coin. A statement can be true on one plane of existence and untrue on another. For example, on the physical plane, you are a separate individual. That is true. But on the spiritual plane, you are one with everything. That is also true. They are not contradictory. They are just different levels of truth. Understanding this allows you to hold two seemingly opposite ideas at the same time. This is a hallmark of a flexible and powerful mind. It moves you beyond black and white thinking and into a more nuanced and more accurate understanding of reality. Number 12, is life just a constant hum or a vibration? The human eye can only perceive a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum, what we call visible light. We are blind to radio waves, microwaves, X-rays, and gamma rays, yet they are all around us. The average solid object, like the chair you are sitting on, is more than 99.99999% empty space. The feeling of solidity comes from the electromagnetic repulsion between atoms, which are all vibrating at immense speeds. Sound is nothing more than vibrations in the air, translated by our ears. The only difference between a low C note and a high C note is the frequency of the vibration. The third Hermetic principle is the principle of vibration. The Kybalion says, "Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates." This principle builds directly on the principle of mentalism. If the universe is mental, then this mental energy is not static. It is in a constant state of motion. From the highest spiritual plane to the densest form of matter, everything is vibrating. The only difference between different things is their frequency of vibration. Think about it like this. Matter, energy, mind, and spirit are not separate categories of things. They are just different points on a single, continuous scale of vibration. At the lowest end of the scale, you have forms of matter that vibrate very slowly. This is what we perceive as solid objects. As the frequency of vibration increases, you move up the scale. You get to energy like heat and light, go higher still, and you reach the mental planes. Your thoughts are vibrations. A quick, sharp, high-energy thought of inspiration is a very high-frequency vibration. A slow, heavy, dense thought of depression is a very low-frequency vibration. At the very top of the scale is the all, pure spirit, vibrating at a frequency so high it is practically at rest. This is a complete game changer for how we view the world. It means that there is no real division between the physical and the non-physical. It is all just vibration. This explains so many things. It explains how mind can influence matter. It is not a magical leap. It is just one level of vibration influencing another. The practical application of this is immense. If your mental state is a vibration, then you can change your state by changing your vibration. This is not about thinking happy thoughts. It is about actively cultivating a higher mental and emotional frequency. How do you do this? Through your focus. What you place your attention on determines your vibrational state. If you focus on fear, lack, and resentment, you are tuning your mental instrument to a low frequency. And like a radio, you will only be able to pick up experiences that match that frequency. You will notice more things to be fearful of. You will experience more lack. If you want to change your experience, you have to change the station. You have to consciously choose to focus on things that have a higher vibration: gratitude, love, compassion, creativity. These are not just nice feelings. They are high-frequency states of being. When you deliberately cultivate these states, you raise your personal vibration. As your vibration changes, your perception of the world changes. You start to notice opportunities you were blind to before. You attract different kinds of people and circumstances into your life. This is the real work. It is mental alchemy. It is about learning to control your own vibration. The key is your will. You can use your will to direct your attention. It is not easy, especially at first. The mind is used to vibrating at its habitual level, but with practice, you can learn to consciously choose your frequency. This is the power to create your own reality. You are not changing the world. You are changing your vibration, and as a result, the world you experience changes. Number 11, are good and bad just two sides of the same thing? In 1820, Hans Christian Ørsted discovered that an electric current could create a magnetic field, showing that electricity and magnetism were related. By the 1860s, James Clerk Maxwell had unified them into a single-force electromagnetism. A thermometer does not measure cold. It only measures the level of heat, which is molecular motion. Cold is just our word for a lower degree of heat. Courage and fear are both responses to a perceived threat. They activate similar physiological pathways in the body. The difference is the mental interpretation and the resulting action. The fourth Hermetic principle is the principle of polarity. Its axiom is everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same opposites, are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. This principle states that everything that exists has an opposite, but these opposites are not two different things. They are two extremes of the same thing. Think of a stick. It has a left end and a right end. But it is all one stick. Hot and cold are not different phenomena. They are both temperature. Cold is just the absence of heat. Light and darkness are the same. Darkness is just the absence of light. You cannot have one without the other. They are defined by their relationship. This applies to everything, especially on the mental plane. Love and hate are not two separate forces. They are two poles of the same spectrum of emotional attachment. Courage and fear are two poles of the same response to risk. Good and evil, wealth and poverty, success and failure, the Hermetic teachings say, these are all pairs of opposites that are identical in nature, just different in degree. This is a profoundly liberating concept. It means that you are never stuck at one end of the pole. Because both poles are part of the same thing, you can always move along the scale. This is the art of mental transmutation, a key Hermetic practice. It is the ability to change your own mental state by consciously shifting your vibration from one pole to another. Here's how it works. Let's say you are feeling fear. The common advice is to fight the fear or ignore it. The Hermetic approach is different. It recognizes that fear and courage are on the same spectrum. So, instead of fighting fear, you focus on cultivating courage. You do not try to destroy the negative pole. You focus on strengthening the positive pole. You do this by raising your vibration. You change your thoughts, you change your focus, you shift your mental state from the pole of fear towards the pole of courage. You are sliding along the scale. This is not about pretending you are not afraid. It is about acknowledging the fear as one end of the stick and then deliberately choosing to start walking towards the other end. It is an act of will. You can do this with any pair of opposites. If you are feeling hatred or resentment towards someone, you can transmute it into understanding or even love, not by forcing yourself, but by changing your mental focus. You can shift from a state of poverty consciousness to a state of abundance consciousness by changing your core beliefs and focus. This principle also teaches us to be wary of absolute judgments. All truths are but half-truths. Any statement about reality is only true from a certain point of view, on a certain level. What is good for one person can be bad for another. What is considered a failure can be the seed of a great success. Understanding polarity allows you to see both sides. It moves you out of rigid, dogmatic thinking and into a more fluid and holistic understanding. It helps you see the whole stick, not just the end you are currently holding. Number 10, does everything really have a rhythm like the tides? A pendulum swings. After reaching its highest point on the right, it must swing back to the left. The farther it swings to the right, the farther it will swing to the left. Economic cycles move from periods of boom to periods of bust. This has been a documented pattern for hundreds of years. The human body operates on circadian rhythms, 24-hour cycles of sleep, wakefulness, hormone release, and body temperature. Even our moods can have a cyclical nature. The fifth Hermetic principle is the principle of rhythm. It states, everything flows out, and in everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. FTD rhythm compensates. This principle tells us that the universe is in constant motion, but this motion is not random. It is a measured rhythmic swing. It is like a cosmic pendulum, always moving from one pole to the other. We see this everywhere in the physical world. The rise and fall of the tides, the cycle of the seasons, the swing of day into night and back into day. The principle of rhythm says this is not just a physical phenomenon. It applies to the mental and spiritual planes as well. Our moods swing. We have periods of high energy and creativity followed by periods of rest and integration. We have moments of great joy and moments of deep sadness. Our life itself is a rhythm, a swing from birth to death, and perhaps back again. Civilizations rise and fall. Fashions come and go. For many people, this principle feels like a curse. They feel like they are at the mercy of the pendulum. When things are good, they are anxious, waiting for the inevitable swing back to the bad. When things are bad, they feel hopeless, stuck at the bottom of the swing. They are being thrown around by the rhythm of life. But the Hermetic teachings say that you do not have to be a victim of this rhythm. You can learn to master it. This does not mean you can stop the pendulum from swinging. That is impossible. The rhythm is a universal law, but you can learn to neutralize its effects on you. How? The key is awareness. First, you must accept that the rhythm exists. You must stop fighting it. When you are on an upswing, enjoy it, but do not become attached to it. Know that a downswing will come, and it is a natural part of the cycle. When you are on a downswing, do not despair. Do not identify with the low state. Know that the pendulum will inevitably swing back up. The next step is what the Kybalion calls the law of neutralization. This is a higher use of the principle. It involves rising above the unconscious swing of the pendulum. You create a stable center of consciousness within yourself that is not affected by the back and forth motion. Imagine you are on a ship in a storm. The ship is pitching and rolling. You can be thrown from one side to the other. But if you find the center of gravity of the ship, the point of least motion, you can remain stable. In mental terms, this means cultivating a state of detachment or equanimity. You still experience the highs and lows, but you are no longer identified with them. You become the observer of the swing, not the victim of it. You use the upswing to create and achieve, and you use the downswing for rest, reflection, and planning. You learn to use the energy of the rhythm instead of being used by it. This is a skill that takes practice. It requires self-awareness and mental discipline, but it is the path to true emotional stability. It is the end of being a slave to your moods. You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. Number 9 is every effect linked to a hidden cause. The term luck appeared in the English language in the 15th century, related to games of chance. Before that, concepts like fate or divine will were more common. Studies in psychology have shown that people who believe they are lucky are often simply more open to opportunities, more resilient to failure, and more optimistic, which causes them to create their own good fortune. In chaos theory, the butterfly effect posits that a small change in one state of a system can result in large differences in a later state. A butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil could, in theory, set off a tornado in Texas. The 6th Hermetic principle is the principle of cause and effect. The axiom is every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause, everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for a law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. This principle is a direct challenge to the idea of luck, chance, or accident. It states that there is no such thing. Everything that happens for a reason. There is a cause or a chain of causes for every single effect we see in our lives. Many of these causes are hidden from us, so we call the effects chance. But just because we cannot see the cause does not mean it does not exist. This principle operates on all planes. On the physical plane, it is easy to understand. If you drop a glass, the cause is gravity, and you letting go. The effect is it shatters on the floor. But the principle says this is just as true on the mental plane. Your moods, your thoughts, your character, your abilities, these are all effects. They have causes. They did not just appear out of nowhere. They are the result of your upbringing, your experiences, your education, your own previous thoughts and actions. Most people operate as effects. They are the product of the desires, wills, and moods of others, and of the environment around them. They are like pawns on a chessboard, moved around by forces they do not understand. They react to everything. Their life is a series of effects that they feel they have no control over. This is where feelings of victimhood come from. The Hermetic teaching urges us to become causes. This does not mean controlling other people. It means mastering your own inner world. You become a cause by taking control of your own mental states. Instead of letting outside events dictate your mood, you choose your mood. Instead of reacting to a situation with your habitual programming, you consciously choose your response. You start to create effects in your own life rather than just experiencing the effects created by others. This is a process of moving from the lower plane of effects to the higher plane of causes. The masses of people, the Kybalion says, are carried along on the plane of effect. They are obedient to their environment and the stronger wills of others. The masters, on the other hand, rise to the higher plane. They understand the rules of the game. They do not annul the principles on the lower plane, they use them. They use the principle of polarity to change their own mental state. They use the principle of rhythm to stay balanced. They become the players of the game, not the pieces. This is not about blaming yourself for every bad thing that happens. It is about taking radical responsibility for your own experience. If you do not like the effects in your life, you must look for the causes. And the cause is almost always on a higher plane. If you have a physical effect like debt, the cause is likely on the mental plane, your beliefs about money. By changing the cause on the mental plane, you can change the effect on the physical plane. It is not magic, it is law. It is difficult work because it requires honesty and self-examination. But it is the only way to move from being a pawn to being a player in the game of life. Number 8, how does balance create everything? In biology, sexual reproduction, which involves the combination of male and female gametes, leads to greater genetic diversity and adaptability than asexual reproduction. In electricity, there is a positive and a negative charge. Their interaction creates current and power. In storytelling, almost all compelling narratives are driven by the interplay between active, assertive forces, often coded masculine, and receptive, nurturing forces, often coded feminine. This dynamic creates tension, growth, and resolution. The 7th and final Hermetic principle is the principle of gender. The axiom states gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. This is important. This principle is not about physical sex. That is just one manifestation of this universal law on the physical plane. The principle of gender is about a much broader concept. It says that everything in the universe contains two aspects, a masculine and a feminine principle. These are not about men and women. They are about two fundamental types of energy. The masculine principle is the active, projective, outgoing energy. It is the force that initiates, directs, and asserts. It is the yang in Taoist philosophy. It is the seed. The feminine principle is the receptive, creative, nurturing energy. It is the force that receives, incubates, and brings forth. It is the yin. It is the fertile soil. The principle says that nothing can be created without the interplay of both of these energies. The masculine principle alone is just scattered, uncontained force. The feminine principle alone is just dormant, unactivated potential. Creation happens when the masculine energy projects into the feminine energy, which then nurtures the seed and brings something new into being. This happens on all planes. On the physical plane, we see it in reproduction. On the mental plane, it is how we create new ideas. Your conscious mind has a masculine and a feminine aspect. The Kabbalion talks about the I and the me. The I is the masculine aspect. It is the part of your mind that is aware, that wills, that directs attention. It is the part that says, I will do this. The me is the feminine aspect. It is the subconscious, the vast storehouse of memories, habits, and creative potential. It is the mental womb. A new idea is born when your I, masculine, directs its attention and will towards a certain subject. It plants a seed of thought. This seed is received by the me, feminine, which incubates it, connects it with other existing knowledge, and eventually brings forth a fully formed idea or inspiration. A person who is all masculine energy is all action and no reflection. They are aggressive and forceful, but they burn out quickly and their actions lack depth. A person who is all feminine energy is all dreams and no action. They are receptive to ideas but never bring them into the physical world. The key to a balanced and creative life is the harmonious interplay of both principles within yourself. You need the will to act masculine and the patience to gestate ideas feminine. You need the courage to project yourself into the world, masculine, and the wisdom to be receptive to feedback and new information, feminine. This principle is the capstone of the entire system. It explains how creation works. The principle of mentalism says the universe is mind. The principle of gender explains how that mind creates. It is a constant process of the masculine aspect of the AL projecting its will and thought, and the feminine aspect receiving it and manifesting it into the universe we experience. And because of the principle of correspondence, the same creative process is available to you in your own mind. You are a mental creator. Understanding this principle is understanding how to consciously and deliberately bring new things into your life. Number 7, can you actually change your reality by changing your thoughts? Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. For a long time, scientists believed the adult brain was a fixed, static organ. We now know that every thought you have and every action you take physically alters the structure of your brain. The Rosenthal effect, or Pygmalion effect, is a psychological phenomenon where higher expectations placed upon people lead to an increase in their performance. A 1968 study showed that when teachers were told certain students were intellectual bloomers, those students showed significantly higher IQ gains, even though they were chosen at random. The teacher's beliefs changed the student's reality. This is the practical application of the principle of mentalism. It is where the ancient philosophy meets the modern world of neuroscience and psychology. The principle states the all is mind, the universe is mental. If this is true, it is the most important fact a human being can ever learn. It means that the fundamental substance of reality is something we all have direct access to thought. So how do you actually use this? It is not about simply thinking positive and hoping for the best. That is a very shallow interpretation. It is about understanding that your mind is a broadcasting and receiving station. Your dominant thoughts and beliefs are the frequency you are broadcasting on. The reality you experience is the signal you are receiving back. The process is one of mental transmutation. It is alchemy. It is turning the lead of your lower habitual negative thoughts into the gold of conscious, deliberate, creative thoughts. The first step is awareness. You have to start paying attention to what you are thinking. Most people's minds are like a wild horse, running wherever they please, dragged around by external events and old programming. You have to become the rider of the horse. You can start by simply observing your thoughts without judgment. What are the stories you tell yourself all day? Are they stories of lack, victimhood, and fear? Or are they stories of capability, opportunity, and strength? The second step is the use of will. Once you are aware of a negative or unproductive thought pattern, you must consciously choose to withdraw your attention from it. This is crucial. You do not fight the thought. What you resist persists. Fighting a negative thought gives it more energy. Instead, you starve it of the one thing it needs to survive your attention. The third step is substitution. You cannot just leave a vacuum in your mind. You must replace the negative thought with a constructive one. This is where tools like affirmations and visualization can be useful, but only if they are done with feeling and belief. If you are deeply in debt and you repeat, "I am wealthy," while feeling the stress of your bills, you are creating a mental conflict. The dominant vibration wins. Your feeling of lack is a much stronger vibration than your half-hearted affirmation. The key is to change the feeling state first. Find something, anything, to feel genuinely grateful for. The feeling of gratitude has a very high vibration. From that state of gratitude, you can then begin to focus on the reality you wish to create. You build the mental equivalent of what you want. You think about it, feel it, and act as if it is already on its way. This is not a one-time fix. It is a daily practice. It is mental hygiene. You are literally rewiring your brain. You are carving new neural pathways. At first, it feels difficult, like walking through a dense forest. The old negative pathways are like superhighways. Your thoughts travel down them automatically. But every time you consciously choose a new thought, you clear a little more of the new path. Over time, that new path becomes easier and easier to travel until it becomes your new default. Your baseline reality begins to shift. This is the great work. It is changing your world from the inside out. Number 6, how do you stop swinging from highs to lows? The global wellness tourism market, which includes retreats and experiences aimed at achieving balance, was valued at over $650 billion before the pandemic. The concept of a hedonic treadmill in psychology suggests that humans quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative life events. A lottery winner and a person who has become paralyzed will, on average, return to a similar happiness level after about a year. Bipolar disorder, a condition characterized by extreme mood swings, affects an estimated 4.4% of US adults at some time in their lives. This is the challenge of the principle of rhythm and the principle of polarity in action. We are all on a pendulum, swinging between the poles of our experiences, happiness and sadness, success and failure, energy and fatigue. For many, this swing feels uncontrollable and exhausting. We chase the highs and dread the lows. Modern culture encourages this. It tells us to be happy all the time, to be constantly productive, to always be on. This is a recipe for burnout and disappointment because it is a denial of a fundamental law of the universe. So how do you get off the emotional roller coaster? You use the principles themselves to master the swing. The first step is to master polarity. The second is to master rhythm. Mastering polarity means understanding that the high and the low are not two different things. They are two ends of the same stick. Your happiness and your sadness are part of the same emotional spectrum. When you are in a low state, a state of sadness or despair, the trick is not to fight it. Fighting it gives it energy. Instead, you use the art of mental transmutation. You acknowledge the feeling. You accept it as a point on the scale. Then, you use your will to begin to shift your focus. You do not try to jump from despair to ecstatic joy. That is too big a leap. You just try to slide a little way up the scale. You look for a thought that feels slightly better. From despair, maybe you can get to frustration. Frustration is a higher vibration than despair. From frustration, you can get to hope. From hope, you can get to optimism. You are consciously changing your polarity, degree by controlling your attention. Once you get better at changing your polarity at will, you can begin to master rhythm. This is the law of neutralization. It does not mean you stop feeling emotions. It means you create a part of yourself, your core consciousness, or I, that is above the swing. You learn to identify as the observer of your moods, not the moods themselves. Think of it this way. When you feel happy, instead of saying, I am happy, you can think I am observing the feeling of happiness passing through me. When you feel sad, you think, I am observing the feeling of sadness passing through me. This creates a small but crucial gap between your essential self and your temporary emotional state. You are the sky, the emotions are the clouds passing through. This takes consistent practice. Meditation is a powerful tool for developing this observer consciousness. By sitting and watching your thoughts and feelings come and go without getting attached to them, you are training your mind to find that point of neutrality. When you combine these two skills, you achieve a state of dynamic balance. You still experience the natural rhythms of life, but they no longer throw you off course. You use the upswings to your advantage to create and enjoy. You use the downswings for rest and reflection, knowing they will pass. You are no longer clinging to one pole and fearing the other. You are balanced in the center, using the entire spectrum of life as your tool for growth. You have gotten off the treadmill. Number 5, are you a pawn on the chessboard or the player? A study by Cornell University found that people who make their own decisions about their work, even small ones, are significantly less likely to suffer from stress-related health issues. The psychological concept of learned helplessness occurs when a person is subjected to a stressful situation repeatedly and comes to believe they are incapable of controlling or changing the situation, so they do not try, even when opportunities for change become available. The top 10% of the most productive people do not necessarily work longer hours, they work more deliberately. They are masters of cause and effect, focusing their efforts on the few actions, causes that produce the biggest results effects. This is the central question posed by the principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause. The principle is absolute. The question for each of us is, on which side of the equation do you live your life? Are you living as an effect, or are you living as a cause? To live as an effect is to be a pawn. Your life is largely a reaction to outside forces. Your mood depends on how people treat you. Your financial situation depends on the economy. Your happiness depends on your partner's behavior. You feel like a victim of circumstances. When something bad happens, your first thought is to blame something or someone outside of yourself. This is the default state for most of humanity. It is easy, it requires no real self-examination. But it is a state of powerlessness. To live as a cause is to be the player. This means taking 100% responsibility for your experience of life. This is not the same as taking the blame for everything. It does not mean that if a hurricane destroys your house, it is your fault. It means you take responsibility for your response to the hurricane. You are the cause of your own mental and emotional state. Becoming a cause is a conscious choice. It starts with understanding that your current life, your health, your relationships, your finances is an effect. It is the sum total of all the causes you have set in motion up to this point, your thoughts, your beliefs, your habits, your decisions, your actions. They have all led you to this exact moment. If you do not like the effects, you have to change the causes. This is the great work. It means you can no longer blame your parents, your boss, the government, or the world. You have to look inward. You have to identify the root causes in your own mind. What are the beliefs that are causing you to be in debt? What are the mental habits that are causing your relationships to fail? This is where the other principles come in as tools. You use mentalism to understand that your thoughts are creative causes. You use polarity to change a negative mental cause, a belief in lack, to a positive one, a belief in abundance. You use vibration to raise your mental state to match the reality you want to create. Being a player means being proactive, not reactive. You decide what you want to experience, and then you set the appropriate causes in motion. You want to be healthier. The effect is health. The causes are better food, more exercise, less stress. You do not wait to get sick and then react. You proactively cause health. You want a better relationship. The effect is a loving partnership. The causes are better communication, more empathy, setting boundaries. You do not wait for a fight to happen and then react. You proactively cause harmony. This is the difference between the masses and the masters. The masses are swept along by the currents of life, pawns in a game they do not understand. The masters have risen to a higher plane of causation. They understand the laws. They do not get to break the rules of the game, but by understanding the rules, they can use them to their advantage. They choose their moves deliberately. They are no longer played by life. They are playing the game of life. Number 4, what does it mean to be a mental creator? The double-slit experiment in quantum physics demonstrates that light and matter can exhibit characteristics of both waves and particles. The very act of measuring which slit the particle goes through forces it to behave like a particle. The act of observation seems to influence the outcome. The creative process for many great artists and inventors often involves a period of intense, focused work, masculine, followed by a period of incubation and letting go, feminine, after which the aha moment of insight arrives. In business, a successful company needs both a strong vision and direction, masculine, and a great company culture that nurtures ideas and people, feminine. This is the domain of the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. This principle is the key to conscious creation. It explains the mechanics of how to bring something new into being, whether it is an idea, a business, a work of art, or a new state of being for yourself. To be a mental creator is to consciously use both the masculine and feminine principles of your own mind. Let's break down the process. It starts with the masculine principle. This is your conscious, willing I. This is the part of you that desires, that sets goals, that directs focus. The first step of any creation is to plant a seed. You have to decide what you want to create. This requires clarity and focus. You use your will, masculine energy, to form a clear mental image of what you desire. You are the projector. You are sending out the signal. This is an active, assertive process. But if you only use masculine energy, you will fail. You will try to force the creation into existence through sheer effort. You will push and strive and get frustrated when it does not happen immediately. This leads to burnout and a sense of struggle. The second crucial step is to engage the feminine principle. Once you have planted the seed with your conscious mind, you must release it into the fertile soil of your subconscious mind, the me. This is the mental womb. This is an act of trust and receptivity. You let go of the how. You stop trying to control every detail. You allow the subconscious to do its work. The subconscious is far more powerful than the conscious mind. It will take your mental seed and begin to nurture it. It will make connections you were not aware of. It will attract the resources, people, and opportunities needed to bring the idea into physical form. This feminine phase is often the hardest for people in our modern, action-oriented society. It requires patience. It requires faith. It feels like you are doing nothing, but this is where the real creative work happens. It is a period of gestation. During this time, your job is to maintain a receptive, positive state. You protect the growing seed from doubt and fear. You feed it with feelings of gratitude and expectation. The final step is the birth. The idea or the opportunity will manifest in the physical world. It might come as a sudden insight, a coincidental meeting, or a new opportunity that appears out of nowhere. When this happens, you must switch back to your masculine energy. You must act on the opportunity. The universe gives you the opening. You have to walk through the door. This is the rhythm of creation. Masculine action planting, feminine receptivity, gestation, masculine action, harvesting. Most people fail because they are imbalanced. They are all masculine, all action, no trust, or all feminine, all dreams, no action. The master creator understands how to dance between these two energies. They know when to push and when to let go. They know when to direct and when to receive. By mastering the interplay of these two principles within your own mind, you move from being a dreamer to being a conscious creator of your own reality. Number 3, why do so many people misuse this knowledge? The history of alchemy is filled with two types of practitioners. There were the true alchemists who sought spiritual transformation, turning the lead of the ego into the gold of enlightenment and saw physical alchemy as a metaphor. And there were the puffers who were only interested in making physical gold, often driven by greed. They almost always failed. The self-help movement known as the New Thought movement, which heavily influenced books like The Secret, drew many of its core ideas from Hermetic principles. However, it often simplified them into a name it and claim it formula for material gain. The global market for counterfeit luxury goods is estimated to be worth nearly $500 billion, a massive industry built on the desire for the appearance of wealth without the substance. The Hermetic teachings have always been, lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. This is not because it is an elitist system, it is because the knowledge is powerful, and like any powerful tool, it can be misunderstood and misused. When the principles are approached with the wrong intention, they either do not work or they create negative consequences. The primary way this knowledge is misused is through selfishness and greed. A person learns about the principle of mentalism and the power of the mind to create. Their first instinct is not to improve their character or to be of service, but to acquire material wealth, power, or control over others. They try to use these universal laws for purely personal, ego-driven gain. The problem with this approach is that it ignores the interconnectedness of everything. It violates the spirit of the principles. The universe as a whole. VALL is one mind. When you try to use these laws to harm or manipulate another part of the whole for your own benefit, you are ultimately working against yourself. It is like one hand trying to steal from the other hand. You might succeed in the short term, but you are creating disharmony within the larger system of which you are a part. The principle of cause and effect ensures this. If you set in motion a cause of greed or manipulation, the effect that comes back to you will be of a similar nature. You might get the money you desire, but it may come with anxiety, loss of relationships, and a sense of spiritual emptiness. The rhythm will swing. A gain acquired through selfish means will often be followed by a corresponding loss. Another misuse is intellectual arrogance. A person learns the 7 principles and feels they now have all the answers. They look down on the masses who are still pawns on the chessboard. They use the knowledge to inflate their ego, not to cultivate wisdom and compassion. They can talk about the principles all day, but they do not live them. Their knowledge is purely theoretical. It has not been integrated into their being. This is a subtle but profound trap. The purpose of this knowledge is not to feel superior. It is to become a better, more effective, and more loving human being. A third misuse is passivity. This is the flip side of the greed-driven approach. A person learns that all is mind and decides they do not have to do anything in the physical world. They believe they can just sit on their couch and visualize $1 million and it will magically appear. This is a misunderstanding of the principle of gender. Creation requires both the feminine receptivity, visualization, and the masculine action. The universe will meet you halfway, but you have to take the first steps. You have to act on the opportunities that your mental work creates. The true path of the student of this wisdom is one of balance. It is about using these principles for self-mastery first. The goal is not to change the world, but to change yourself. As you change yourself, your world changes as a natural consequence. The motivation should be growth, wisdom, and the desire to be a more positive and creative force in the universe, not just for your own sake, but for the sake of the whole. Number 2, is this just the law of attraction in an old book? The term law of attraction was first used in a book by Prentice Mulford in 1879, part of the New Thought movement. The 2006 film and book, The Secret sold over 30 million copies and was translated into over 50 languages, bringing a simplified version of this idea into the global mainstream. A common criticism of the mainstream law of attraction is that it promotes a form of victim blaming, suggesting that people are solely responsible for negative events like illness or poverty, without accounting for systemic or random factors. It is easy to look at the Hermetic principles and see them as the original source for the modern law of attraction. And in a way, that is true. The principle of mentalism and the principle of vibration are the core mechanics behind the idea that like attracts like. But to say that the Hermetic teachings are just the law of attraction is like saying a master chef's cookbook is just a recipe for toast. It misses the depth, the nuance, and the all-important safety warnings. The mainstream commercialized version of the law of attraction often presents a dangerously oversimplified formula. Think about what you want, believe you can have it, and it will come to you. This is like giving a child the keys to a sports car with no instruction manual. The Hermetic teachings provide that full manual. They offer a complete system with checks and balances. The law of attraction, as it is often taught, focuses almost exclusively on the first principle, mentalism. It tells you your thoughts create your reality. This is true, but it is only 1/7 of the picture. Without the other 6 principles, you are missing the context that makes it work safely and effectively. The principle of correspondence, as above, so below, reminds you that you have to work on all planes. You cannot just have a mental cause, I want a new job, without a physical cause, sending out resumes, networking. Your inner work must be matched by outer work. The principle of polarity teaches you how to actually change your thoughts. It is not just about forcing a positive thought, it is about the subtle art of sliding up the scale from a negative emotional state to a positive one. The principle of rhythm is the great reality check. It warns you that life is a pendulum. You will have highs and you will have lows. The goal is not to be ecstatically happy all the time. The goal is to achieve balance and equanimity through the natural swings of life. The commercial law of attraction often sells a fantasy of permanent, effortless bliss, which sets people up for disappointment when the pendulum inevitably swings. The principle of cause and effect adds the element of responsibility. It is not just about what you want the effect. It is about setting the right causes in motion. This includes not just your thoughts, but your actions, your habits, and your character. And the principle of gender explains the creative process. It is a balance of masculine action and feminine receptivity. The law of attraction often overemphasizes the feminine part visualizing, receiving, and downplays the masculine part taking inspired action. In short, the Hermetic philosophy is a complete holistic system for self-mastery. The goal is not to acquire more stuff. The goal is to achieve mastery over your own mind, to live in harmony with the universal laws, and to evolve your consciousness. Material success may be a byproduct of this process, but it is not the goal itself. The modern law of attraction movement has often stripped out the spiritual and ethical core of these teachings and turned them into a technique for material manifestation. It is a part of the truth, but it is not the whole truth. And as the principle of polarity says, a half-truth can be the most misleading thing of all. Number 1. So, what do you actually do with this information tomorrow morning? The human attention span has been decreasing. One study by Microsoft in 2015 famously claimed the average attention span was 8 seconds, less than that of a goldfish. While the methodology is debated, the trend of increasing distraction is real. More than 70% of people who start reading a non-fiction book never finish it. The gap between knowing something and doing something is the biggest challenge in all of self-improvement. This is the most important chapter. Philosophy is useless if it does not change how you live. This is not about memorizing 7 principles. It is about integrating them into your daily life. So, what do you do tomorrow morning when you wake up? First, you start with mentalism and vibration. The first few minutes of your day are critical. When you wake up, before you check your phone, before you let the problems of the day rush in, take 1 minute. Just one. Lie in bed and consciously choose your mental vibration for the day. Do not think about your to-do list. Think about something you are genuinely grateful for. The feeling of the warm bed. The sound of birds outside. A good memory. Feel that gratitude in your body. This act sets your keynote vibration for the day. You are starting as a cause, not an effect. Second, as you go through your day, practice being the observer. This is using the principle of rhythm. When you feel a strong emotion, positive or negative, try to catch yourself. Create a tiny mental space and say to yourself, here is the feeling of anger, or here is the feeling of joy. Do not judge it, do not cling to it, just notice it. You are practicing being the sky, not the cloud. This simple act of observation stops you from being completely swept away by the pendulum of your moods. Third, look for the pairs of opposites. This is applying the principle of polarity. If you feel fear about a presentation, acknowledge it, then consciously look for the other end of the stick: courage. What is one small, courageous action you can take right now? Maybe it is just opening the document to start working on it. You are not trying to eliminate the fear. You are just choosing to put your energy and focus on its opposite pole. Fourth, take responsibility. This is the heart of cause and effect. If something goes wrong during your day, resist the urge to blame. Ask yourself a different question. How did I contribute to this outcome? What cause in my thinking or my action led to this effect? What can I learn from this? This is not about self-blame. It is about self-empowerment. It puts you back in the driver's seat. Fifth, watch for the patterns. This is the principle of correspondence. Notice how the same themes or challenges seem to pop up in different areas of your life. A pattern of procrastination at work might also show up as a pattern of avoiding difficult conversations in your relationships. As above, so below. The pattern is the root. If you can identify and change the mental pattern, you can solve multiple problems at once. Sixth, balance your energy. This is the principle of gender. Pay attention to whether you are being all action masculine or all passivity feminine. If you have been pushing and forcing things all day, schedule some time to just be receptive. Listen to music, go for a walk in nature, meditate, let your mind rest, and incubate. If you have been dreaming and planning all day, find one small, concrete action you can take to move your dream forward. These are not grand, life-altering actions. They are small, simple shifts in awareness. That is all it takes to begin. You do not need to read another book. You do not need another app. You just need to start applying these principles in the small moments of your everyday life. This is not a 30-day challenge. This is the work of a lifetime, but it is the most rewarding work there is. It is the process of moving from being a creature of circumstance to becoming the conscious creator of your life. And it can all start with that 1 minute tomorrow morning.